The clang of metal against metal echoed through the vast corridors of Luthor 9's labor pits, where thousands of human slaves toiled under the unrelenting gaze of their auxiliary overseers. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning ore, and the only sounds were the heavy machinery and the occasional crack of an energy whip. Commander Elias Voss had once worn a uniform, fought wars for a home he barely remembered. Now he wore shackles. His hands, calloused and scarred, gripped the edge of a rusted mining cart as he shoveled raw minerals into the processing chambers. His muscles burned with exhaustion, but stopping meant death. A low growl came from behind him. Faster, human. A auxiliary overseer loomed above him. Reptilian eyes narrowed. The alien's 4 arms gripped an electroprod, sparking ominously. Voss forced himself to keep moving, his mind focused elsewhere. A message had reached him 2 nights ago, one that should have been impossible. A smuggled data chip slipped into his meager rations by a nameless ally. The words were burned into his mind. Iron Dawn still lives. Escape is coming. Be ready. The resistance. The last embers of humanity's hope. Voss suppressed a smirk as he heard the distant rumble of engines, far too close to be standard transport ships. The overseers heard it too, their movements becoming rigid, hands gripping their weapons a little tighter. Then, all hell broke loose. An explosion rocked the mining compound, sending shockwaves through the metal scaffolding. Sirens wailed as fire and smoke erupted from the eastern landing pads. A auxiliary gunship plummeted from the sky, trailing flames before crashing into the fuel depots. The blast was deafening, sending debris flying in all directions. Voss didn't hesitate. He spun, grabbing the nearest auxiliary's electroprod and driving it upward into the alien's throat. The overseer convulsed, screeching in agony before collapsing. The energy barrier around the prisoners flickered, then died. The uprising had begun. Shouts of defiance filled the air as thousands of human slaves turned on their captors, using makeshift weapons, stolen tools, and sheer desperation to overpower their auxiliary masters. Voss led the charge, rallying a group of hardened prisoners and moving toward the armory. "This is it," he bellowed over the chaos. "No more chains, no more masters." They stormed the security checkpoint, overwhelming the guards. A fellow prisoner, a wiry engineer named Doran, hacked into the systems, unlocking blast doors and releasing prisoners across the complex. Outside, through the haze of smoke and fire, a massive freighter descended from the sky, its hull marked with the sigil of the Iron Dawn. Resistance fighters poured out, cutting down auxiliary troops with stolen Dominion weaponry. Voss grabbed a rifle from a fallen guard and turned to his men. "This is our moment," he said. "We either die on our knees or we rise as free men." The choice was easy. They ran toward the battlefield, toward their future, toward the first true fight for humanity's freedom. The stolen freighter bucked and swayed as it broke through Luthor 9's upper atmosphere, its damaged thrusters struggling to keep control. Inside, Elias Voss gripped the side of a rusted bulkhead, his body still running on the adrenaline of battle. Around him, dozens of former slaves sat slumped against the walls, their bodies battered but their eyes burning with something new, hope. The Iron Dawn had come for them. A woman in dark, reinforced armor stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal sharp, calculating eyes and a cascade of black hair streaked with silver. "Commander Voss?" she asked. He nodded, recognizing her instantly. "You must be Captain Raylevin, the one and only." She gestured around the ship. "Welcome to the rebellion. We weren't sure if you were still alive, but it looks like you gave the auxiliary a hell of a fight." Voss exhaled. "They're not ready for what's coming next." Vin smirked. "That's what we're counting on." The freighter lurched as it engaged its hyperdrive, stars stretching into lines before snapping into the cold embrace of deep space. For the first time in years, Voss was truly free. But the fight was far from over. The ship emerged from hyperspace over a dark, shattered world. Below them, An asteroid field drifted lazily, pieces of broken ships floating among the wreckage of what must have once been a thriving planet. But among the ruins, there was something else. Hulking warships, battle-worn but intact, hidden in the debris. Voss's breath caught in his throat. The Ghost Fleet, Vin said, watching his reaction. Hundreds of years ago, during humanity's last stand, these ships were meant to be our salvation. The war ended before they could be used, and they were left to rot. We found them, repaired what we could, and now. She turned to face him. Now, they're yours. Voss stepped forward, looking out at the massive vessels. Battleships, cruisers, fighters, all human-built, all waiting for a commander. He could almost hear them calling out, hungry for war, for revenge. "Why me?" he asked, voice low. Vin's expression darkened. "Because the Dominion knows your name. They'll hunt you. They'll paint you as a monster." She paused. "You can either run, or you can give them a reason to be afraid." Voss clenched his fists. He had spent years in chains, his people suffering under the Auxiliaries' rule. The moment had come to make them pay. He turned back to the Ghost Fleet, his mind already shaping the battle to come. "We take the fight to them," he said. "No more hiding. No more waiting." Vin grinned. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Ghost Fleet stirred to life, their engines glowing in the darkness. The war for humanity's freedom had truly begun. The Ghost Fleet surged forward like a storm waking from centuries of slumber. Dozens of warships, long thought lost, ignited their engines, illuminating the shattered remnants of the old battlefield. From the bridge of the Ironclad, the largest and most battle-ready vessel in the fleet, Commander Elias Voss watched as his people, once slaves, now warriors, prepared for the fight ahead. Across the command deck, Captain Rayla Vin monitored the incoming data streams. "The Dominion still thinks you died on Luthor 9, she said, glancing at Voss. "That won't last long. Once we strike, they'll throw everything they have at us." Voss studied the star charts before him. They had one chance to make a statement, to show the entire galaxy that humanity was no longer broken. "We hit them hard," he said. "Something big, something they can't ignore." A young officer, barely out of his teens, turned from the holo-display. "Sir, there's a Dominion supply convoy scheduled to refuel at Outpost Turek in 2 rotations. If we take it, we cut off their frontline troops for weeks." Voss's jaw tightened. "No, a convoy raid would be a nuisance. I want something that makes them afraid." He pointed at a star system glowing red on the map. "Veltrac Prime." The command deck went silent. Vin let out a low whistle. "You're insane." Veltrac Prime was a key shipyard, the largest in the Dominion's outer territories. Attacking it wasn't just a declaration of war, it was suicide. But if they succeeded, it would cripple the auxiliary fleet before they could mount a counterattack. Voss met Vin's gaze. "They made us slaves, burned our worlds. If we don't make them bleed now, we'll never get another chance." Vin studied him for a moment, then smirked. "Then let's burn it to the ground." Hours later, the attack begins. The Ghost Fleet burst from hyperspace like an avenging specter, their hulls reflecting the light of Veltrac Prime's twin suns. Alarms blared across the auxiliary shipyard as dozens of Dominion warships scrambled to intercept the incoming human fleet. Voss stood tall on the Ironclad's bridge. "All ships, engage." The battle erupted in an instant. Swarms of human fighters weaved through the auxiliary defenses, launching coordinated strikes against critical installations. Missile salvos streaked through space, hammering the shipyard's defensive platforms. The Dominion fought back with ruthless efficiency, their warships moving in tight formations, unleashing torrents of plasma fire. The Ironclad shook under the onslaught, but Voss held firm. "Stay the course," he barked. "Target their command center." A trio of human bombers broke through enemy lines, streaking toward the central control hub of Veltrac Prime. Explosions ripped through the facility, sending debris spiraling into space. Fires spread across the station as sections of it collapsed. Voss gritted his teeth. This was just the beginning. The wreckage of Veltrac Prime still burned in the void behind them as the Ghost Fleet slipped away into hyperspace. The first major strike against the Dominion had been a success, but Elias Voss knew the war had only just begun. The Ironclad's bridge was tense. Engineers scrambled to repair damaged systems, medics rushed wounded crew members to the infirmary, and officers monitored Dominion communications. Every passing moment brought the auxiliary response closer. Voss stood at the central holotable, staring at the intelligence reports scrolling before him. The destruction of Veltrac Prime had sent shockwaves through the Dominion, but instead of retaliating immediately, the auxiliary fleet had gone eerily silent. "They're regrouping," Voss muttered. "They won't underestimate us again." Rayla Vin leaned against a console, arms crossed. "Agreed, but we might not have to face them alone." She tapped a control pad, and the hologram shifted to display the insignia of a faction Voss didn't recognize, a stylized black sun with jagged edges. "The Black Sun Syndicate," Vin explained, "a rogue faction of Silari warlords. They're not loyal to the Dominion, and word is, they don't like how Supreme Warlord Zarek runs things. They've reached out, offering weapons, intelligence, and a temporary alliance." Voss frowned. "Why would they help us?" Vin smirked. "Because they want power. If we help them take down Zarek, they claim they'll back our independence in return." Voss looked back at the holodisplay. It was tempting. Too tempting. Humanity was outgunned and outnumbered. A auxiliary civil war could tip the balance. But something about it didn't sit right. #### the meeting. 2 days later, Voss and his strike team arrived at a derelict moon station deep in the Galvorn Nebula. The Black Sun warlords had chosen it as neutral ground, but the moment Voss stepped onto the station, he could feel the trap closing. The warlords were waiting for them. Tall, reptilian figures draped in dark combat armor, their slit pupilled eyes watching every move. The leader, a heavily scared Xilari named Lord Krasik, stepped forward. "You fight with fury," Krasik said in a guttural voice. "I respect that." Voss folded his arms. "If you respect us, then why are you still calling us slaves?" Krasik let out a deep chuckle. "Because that is what your kind has always been." He leaned in slightly. "That perhaps you could be more." Voss tensed. "State your terms." Krasik gestured to his guards, and a data tablet was placed on the table. "We will help you destroy Zarek. In return, when the war is over, humanity swears fealty to the Black Sun." The room went still. Vin's hand drifted toward her sidearm. Voss exhaled slowly. He had suspected treachery, but this was worse. The Black Sun didn't want an alliance. They wanted to replace one set of masters with another. Voss's lips curled into a cold smile. "No deal." Krasik's smirk vanished. The trap snapped shut. ### betrayal and bloodshed. The lights flickered as the station's blast doors slammed shut. Black Sun soldiers raised their weapons. Voss didn't hesitate. "Now," he barked. Before the Xilari could react, Vin hurled a stun grenade into the crowd. A deafening boom filled the chamber, followed by flashes of white-hot light. Voss drew his sidearm and fired, taking down the nearest guard. His strike team followed suit, turning the negotiation into an ambush. Krasik roared in rage, lunging at Voss with razor-sharp claws. Voss barely dodged, twisting aside as he slammed the barrel of his pistol under the Xilari's jaw and pulled the trigger. Krasik's body crumpled, ichor splattering across the floor. Alarms blared as Black Sun reinforcements stormed the station. Voss and his team fought their way back to the docking bay, gunfire and screams echoing through the corridors. By the time they reached the airlock, half of Voss's team was dead or wounded. The Ironclad's pilot screamed through the comms. "Commander, they're launching fighters. This whole place is going up in flames." Voss gritted his teeth. He had made a gamble, and it had nearly cost them everything. But there was one thing the Xilari had learned today. Humanity would never kneel again. The airlock sealed with a hiss as Voss and his team stumbled onto the ironclad, panting and bloodied. Behind them, the Black Sun station was descending into chaos. Explosions rattled the structure as firefights broke out between rival Xilari factions. Some saw Krasik's death as an opportunity to seize power, while others simply wanted revenge. Voss didn't care. He had bigger problems. "Get us out of here," he barked, sprinting onto the bridge. The ironclad's engines were already burning hot. The moment the docking clamps released, the ship shot away from the station, weaving through a storm of laser fire. Black Sun fighters swarmed after them, crimson energy bolts lancing through space. Ray Levin strapped into her seat beside him, wiping the streak of alien blood from her forehead. "That went well," Voss grunted, gripping the console. "Remind me to never negotiate with Xilari again." The ship shuddered as enemy fire pounded their shields. Warning lights flickered across the bridge. The ironclad was a warship, but it wasn't built to take on an entire fleet alone. "We won't make it out at this rate," the helmsman shouted. Voss's mind raced. They were still deep inside the nebula, the distortions making it hard to get a clear escape vector. If they didn't act fast, they'd be torn apart before they could jump to hyperspace. Then an idea hit him. A reckless, desperate idea. "Divert all power to the forward thrusters," he ordered. "Aim straight for the gas giant." The crew turned to stare at him like he was insane. "The gas giant," Vin repeated. "You mean the one filled with enough ionized radiation to fry us in seconds?" Voss smirked grimly. "Exactly." For a split second, there was silence. Then Vin let out a short laugh and turned to the helmsman. "You heard the man. Punch it." The ironclad roared forward, accelerating directly toward the churning atmosphere of the gas giant below. The Black Sun fighters hesitated, unsure whether to follow. The smart ones peeled away. The reckless ones kept coming. They would regret it. As the ironclad plunged into the upper layers of the gas giant, the ship's hull groaned under the pressure. Static crackled through the comms. The radiation storms lashed against the shields, sending arcs of blue lightning dancing across the ship's exterior. The pursuing fighters weren't so lucky. One by one, they broke apart, their engines failing as the radiation fried their systems. Wreckage tumbled into the planet's endless clouds, vanishing into the abyss. Inside the ironclad, the crew held their breath. The ship trembled, alarms blaring, the hull straining. Then, "Now," Voss shouted. The ship's engines flared to full power, slingshotting them out of the gas giant's gravity well like a bullet. Within moments, they were clear. Behind them, the nebula and the burning Black Sun station faded into the void. Silence. Then the bridge erupted into cheers. Voss exhaled. They had escaped. But the war was far from over. "We're not done yet," he muttered, staring at the stars ahead. The Dominion would be coming. And next time, they wouldn't just be running. They'd be striking back. The Ghost Fleet regrouped at a hidden asteroid base in the uncharted sectors, an old human outpost from before the Dominion's conquest. Now, it was a war camp. Docked battleships gleamed under artificial lights, engineers swarmed over hulls, and soldiers drilled in zero-G combat. Elias Voss stood on a raised platform overlooking the hangar, his hands clasped behind his back. The victory at Veltrack Prime had sent a message. The betrayal at the Black Sun station had nearly cost them everything. But now the Ghost Fleet was stronger than ever. Across from him, Ray Levin tapped a data pad, her expression unreadable. "The Black Sun is out for blood. They're hunting us, but they're also keeping the Dominion distracted." She smirked. "I'd call that a win." Voss wasn't convinced. "That won't last. The Dominion will strike soon. Hard. We need to hit them first." Vin's smirk widened. "Funny you should say that." She tossed the data pad onto the table. A hologram flickered to life, a massive Dominion supply convoy, guarded by only a handful of escort ships. Voss frowned. That's too easy. Vin nodded. Because it's bait. The Dominion wanted him. They wanted humanity's rebellion crushed. This convoy was a trap. But traps could be sprung the other way. Voss turned to the command console. Prepare the fleet. We're taking the fight to them. The Battle of Epsilon Rift. The Ghost Fleet lay in wait in the Epsilon Rift, a system filled with gravitational anomalies that made it a nightmare for large fleets. It was here that the Dominion's supply convoy would pass through. Voss sat on the ironclad's bridge, watching the void beyond. All ships, hold position, he ordered. Wait for my mark. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace, right on schedule. Dozens of freighters, flanked by cruisers and a single dreadnought, moved cautiously through the rift. Voss grinned. They don't see us. The Dominion ships adjusted course, moving into the heart of the rift. That was their mistake. The gravitational eddies would slow their response time, and their formations would be forced apart. Now, Voss commanded. The Ghost Fleet surged forward. The ambush was brutal. Human warships, hidden among asteroid clusters, opened fire in perfect synchronization. Torpedoes streaked through the void, striking engines and fuel depots. The first Dominion cruiser exploded in a blinding flash. Panic rippled through the convoy. The dreadnought, far too large to maneuver quickly in the rift, tried to turn its cannons on the attackers. But the Ghost Fleet was faster, slipping through the wreckage like predators in the dark. Voss's voice rang over the comms. Target their command ship. Cut the head off the snake. The ironclad and 2 destroyers flanked the Dominion flagship, pounding its shields with relentless precision. Then came the final blow. A human bomber squadron, flying in perfect formation, streaked toward the dreadnought's bridge. Plasma torpedoes locked on. The Dominion captain had just enough time to realize his mistake before the torpedoes struck home. The dreadnought erupted into a fireball. The remaining Dominion ships, leaderless and broken, fled into hyperspace. Voss exhaled. Another victory. But deep down, he knew the Dominion wouldn't suffer these losses forever. They would send something worse. Something unstoppable. And humanity had to be ready. The celebration was short-lived. Hours after the Ghost Fleet's triumph at Epsilon Rift, their hidden base came under attack. The Dominion had learned their location, and this time they weren't sending a simple fleet. They were sending an annihilation force. Voss stood on the ironclad's bridge, his jaw clenched as red emergency lights flickered. The asteroid base's outer defenses were failing. Explosions bloomed across the viewports as Dominion warships, far larger than anything they had faced before, closed in. How did they find us? Vin demanded, gripping the edge of the console. Voss's expression darkened. We underestimated them. The Dominion had let them win. They had sacrificed their own ships to track the Ghost Fleet back to its lair. Now Supreme Warlord Zarek had sent an execution squad. The Battle of the Hidden Bastion. The asteroid base shook violently as the Dominion's siege cannons pounded its shields. Human forces scrambled to evacuate, loading weapons and supplies onto any ship that could still fly. Fighters and corvettes took off from the hangars, weaving through enemy fire, but they were hopelessly outgunned. A towering Dominion battleship loomed at the edge of the battlefield, its dark hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. This was the Tyrant's Fist, one of the most feared warships in the Dominion fleet. A voice crackled through open comm channels, cold and merciless. This is Warlord Zarek. Humanity's defiance ends today. Voss ignored the taunt. He turned to his crew. If we stay here, we die. We need to break through their lines. A young officer shook his head. Sir, they've got interdiction fields active. We can't jump to hyperspace. Vin cursed. They're boxing us in. Voss narrowed his eyes. If they couldn't run, they had one option left. We take down the Tyrant's Fist. The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Voss activated the fleet-wide channel. This is Commander Voss. The Dominion thinks they can snuff us out. They think we're broken, weak. But we've come too far. We have one shot at this, one shot to strike at the heart of the beast. All ships focus fire on their command vessel. We take out the tyrant's fist, or we die trying. A chorus of acknowledgments rang out. The fleet mobilized. The ironclad led the charge, its forward cannons glowing with power. Every ship in the Ghost Fleet followed, weaving through enemy fire as they closed the distance. The tyrant's fist responded with devastating salvos, tearing through smaller human vessels. But the Ghost Fleet didn't falter. Then, an opening. The Dominion's defenses momentarily staggered as a squadron of human bombers slipped past their flak cannons. Voss seized the moment. All ships, fire everything you've got. A relentless wave of torpedoes, railgun rounds, and energy blasts slammed into the tyrant's fist. The behemoth trembled, its shields flickering. Vin grinned savagely. She's breaking. But then, an alarm blared. The tyrant's fist was charging its planet cracker cannon, a weapon capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single blast. They had seconds to act. Voss gritted his teeth. We're not done yet. The final battle was here. The tyrant's fist loomed like a harbinger of death, its planet cracker cannon humming with energy. If that weapon fired, the Ghost Fleet would be nothing but vapor. Elias Voss refused to let that happen. All ships, focus fire on that cannon. He roared into the comms. The Ghost Fleet responded with everything they had. Railguns spat molten slugs, torpedoes streaked toward the Dominion battleship, and energy blasts carved through its armor. The tyrant's fist shuddered under the assault, its shields flickering, but the cannon kept charging. A countdown appeared on the ironclad's tactical display. 30 seconds until firing. Not fast enough. Vin growled. Voss knew she was right. The Dominion behemoth was built to withstand sieges. The only way to stop that cannon was from the inside. His decision was instant. I'm taking the strike team. We're boarding it. Vin's eyes widened. That's suicide. Maybe, Voss admitted, but it's the only chance we've got. Vin hesitated, then grinned. Then let's make it count. Boarding the beast. A dozen fighters and gunships provided cover as the ironclad's drop pods launched, streaking through space toward the tyrant's fist. Voss and his strike team braced inside the pods, weapons ready. The impact was brutal. Metal screeched as the pod punched through the Dominion warship's hull. The doors blasted open, and Voss stormed out, plasma rifle in hand. Dominion soldiers met them in the corridors, towering reptilian warriors with gleaming energy blades. The halls erupted into chaos. Gunfire and explosions shook the ship as the strike team carved their way toward the cannon's control room. A massive bulkhead blocked their path. Voss turned to the demolition expert. Blow it. The charges detonated, and the door crumbled. The team surged inside, greeted by the sight of Dominion engineers scrambling to fire the weapon. 10 seconds. Voss raised his rifle and fired. The battle was quick and brutal. Dominion officers fell, their bodies slamming against consoles as sparks flew. Voss sprinted to the control panel, but the countdown was already at 5 seconds. There's no time, Vin shouted. Voss's jaw tightened. There was one way. The power core. He spun, raised his rifle, and fired directly into the ship's reactor control unit. Energy surged wildly as containment fields collapsed. The ship's main power flickered, then died. The planet cracker cannon stopped charging. For a moment, there was silence. Then, alarms blared. The tyrant's fist was breaking apart. The fall of the tyrant. Voss slammed his comm. Mission accomplished. Everyone, get out. Now. The Ghost Fleet pounded the crippled battleship with renewed fire. Explosions ripped through its hull. Voss and his team sprinted back to their drop pods as fire engulfed the corridors. The moment their pods launched, the tyrant's fist detonated in a massive, blinding explosion. The shockwave sent debris scattering in all directions. The ironclad caught them in its tractor beams, pulling them safely aboard. On the bridge, the crew erupted into cheers. The Dominion fleet, leaderless and shattered, fled into hyperspace. Humanity had won. Voss collapsed into his chair, breathing heavily. Vin grinned beside him. "You really don't do things the easy way, do you?" Voss chuckled. "Never." He turned to the viewport, staring into the vast unknown. The war wasn't over, but for the first time in history, humanity wasn't running anymore. They were free. And the galaxy would never forget the War of Broken Chains.